All right, we're going to work through T9 case problem review. Which is the Tulsa summer party held on July 4th. And what we're going to do is put the current time up in the corner and then have a countdown to the next 4th of July fireworks. So this is what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. We know this. I'm going to, as usual, take my HTML page, open it in a new tab, and then I'm going to get rid of this so I have some more space to work. All right, so we have the files open, and we need to put our name and date in them. And in tnyjuly.html, we are going to add a script tag, and this is going to point to tnytimer.js, which is our file, the other file that we have open. We're going to defer the loading of the file until the web page loads. And then the script tag has an end script tag. So unlike link, which self-closes, script has an end script. All right, and then it wants us to take a look at the HTML. We're not graded on that, but let's actually go back. I'm going to refresh here, and I'm going to go into the console, and I want to make sure there's no errors here. Okay, I want to make sure that our JavaScript's actually loading. Another way you can do that is if I view source here, I see script src equals tny timer. If I click on that, it should pull up the JavaScript, and it did. All right, we're going to come over to tny timer, and I'm going to check to see what's being checked here. JavaScript functions and JavaScript commands. Okay, so functions is first. All right, go into this at the top of the file, insert a statement to tell the browser to apply strict usage of JavaScript. So we're going to use strict right at the very top before the comment. And then right before next July 4, we're going to insert a function called show clock. No parameters, and within show clock, this is what we're going to do. We're going to declare a variable called this day that stores a new date object containing the date May 19th, 2018 at that time. So I think if I'm going to do it this way, year, month, day of the month, hours is, since it's 9 a.m., use 9/31/27. So that gave us a new date object. And, let's see if this is working, right? So I can just console.log this day. And when I come back to my page and refresh and look at the console, nothing happened because this function never ran. Okay, but if I take this function, I think this should work. I can say show clock. So I ran this function, and you see that it is logging this date, and it's telling us it's Monday, June 18th. Oops. Let's take that back one. January is 0. Do this again. Friday, May 18th, 2018, 9/31/27. And that's what we wanted. Okay. Very good. We know that worked. Declare a variable called local date, which contains the text of the date from the this day function using local conventions. So that's going to be this day dot to locale date string. Okay, there's an E here. This is locale date string, not local date string. And then we have var local time equals this a dot to locale time string. So that is the date and time in human readable format. This isn't such a great. You don't want to really put this out to your page, right? It's very technical with the time zone and everything. So doing it this way, it's human readable. All right, within the inner HTML of the page element with the ID current time. So I'm going to do document.get element by ID, and I'm looking for current time. I'm going to set the inner HTML to write the following code. I'm going to set it to all this. Where date and time are the values of the local date and local time variables. So instead of date here, I'm going to close the string. I'm going to add to it local date, and then I'm going to continue with the string. And then instead of time, I'm going to put in there local time. And this is, spread out amongst a few lines. So what I'm going to do is just to make it easier to see what's going on. Like this, and I think that looks good. And again, if I run this or if I refresh, nothing happens. But if I run show clock and you watch up here, right now it says 11/3/2017 because that is hard coded in there, right? But when I run show clock, it set it to 5/18/2018, 9:31 in the morning, because that's the time that we set back here with our this date. All right. And remember, so far, when you refresh this, it doesn't change anything until you run show clock. All right. And I was able to get to show clock very quickly in my console by hitting the up arrow. That'll give you the last command that you ran. All right. Okay. Hector supplied you the date next July 4th. So it's right there. That returns the date of the next 4th of July. So we don't care how that works. It just works. It calls the next 4th of July. So what I'm going to do is say our J4 date equals next July 4th, and it had to be given a current date, which is this day. Let's see here. So we just did this bit. There's a lot that we're doing here without running any tests. So we'll keep going though. The countdown clock should display countdown to 9 p.m. on the 4th of July. Apply the set hours date to the J4 date to change the hours value to 9 p.m. Okay, so I'm going to say J4 date dot set hours, and we're going to do 21. And again, we do 21 because 9 p.m. is equal to 12 plus 9, which is equal to 21. All right, 12 being, we got to get through the first 12 hours of the morning plus 9 hours in the evening. That gives us 21. So this is, what we would refer to as military time. Okay, so we just did that. Create variables called days, hours, minutes, secs, containing the days, hours, minutes, and seconds until 9 p.m. on the next 4th of July. So the number of days this is going to be a little bit tricky. We're going to take J4 date minus this day. And, our dates, if I did that, let's see what it comes up with. I'm just going to console.log days. Okay. Save, refresh, show clock. If I spell console right. Okay, so clearly this is not the number of days, right? This is actually the number of milliseconds. So instead of just this, what we want to do is take this number, and if we divide it by 1,000, because this was in milliseconds, so if we divide it by 1,000, we're into seconds. And if I take the seconds and divide it by 60, we're into minutes. And if I take the minutes and divide it by 60 again, we're into hours. And if I take that and divide it by 24, we're into days. Right? So let's try this one more time. Refresh, show clock. So between May 18th and the next 4th of July is 47.478 days. And that makes sense. May 18th, about the beginning or middle of May. So you would have all of June, which is about 30 days, and half of May, which is about 15 days. So it's about 45 days plus to get to the 4th of July. So yeah, we're that seems about right. Right, 47 days is much more realistic than however many millions of days that previous value gave. All right, so that's how many days between the current date, this day, and the next 4th of July. Number of hours is going to be, if we take the days from the previous line and we subtract from it math.floor days. So if we look at this, this is, I'm not going to console log this. So this is now telling us it would give us 47.478. And let me do this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to just throw some comments in here so you know what we're talking about. Minus 47. Math.floor rounds down. So take 47.478, round it down. So what we're left with is 0.478. All right, and actually I'm going to put that up here. And 0.478 is representing, it's like half a day. So to take this number is being measured in days. So to get it into hours, we're going to multiply by 24. All right. So I had someone ask in class the other day, do you have to be good at math to be a good programmer? And I don't think you have to be good at math, but you have to be good at logic. And this is more logic. I don't have to know what's going on here in terms of, I didn't do much math in my head. The most math I did in my head was counting from May 18th to the 4th of July. But you have to be good at logic and keeping track of what's going on. Okay, we're getting closer here. So mins is going to be equal to, and it's going to be very similar to the previous line. Okay, but instead of days, we're working with hours. And if we're dealing with a portion of an hour and I need to convert hours to minutes, I'm going to multiply it by 60. And then our seconds is same, only move minutes down, and we still multiply by 60. So the reason we multiply by 60 is because there are 60 seconds in a minute, there are 60 minutes in an hour, there's 24 hours in a day. So now we have these days, hours, min, secs. Okay, and if I look, they're right here, days, hours, min, secs. And if you look, there's this span ID, D left, H left, M left, S left. So I'm just going to copy this D left because I know I'm going to need this. And right here, this is the next step. Change the content, the text content of the elements with the IDs, blah, 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 to the values. So I'm going to say document.get element by ID, and the ID is D left, dot text content. How many days are left is days. Now I know this is wrong. Okay, that's perfectly fine. But I want to show you what we're doing here. And let's talk about a few things. First of all, text content versus inner HTML. So you use text content when you know that your value does not contain HTML because it keeps it clean, keeps it sanitized, and it's like a security thing. If you know there's no HTML in here and someone tries to inject HTML, it's going to actually display it differently. So let's look at this where we have HTML in our value. If I said this was text content, come back, refresh, show clock, look, it puts the actual HTML in here, okay? And that's not what we wanted. We wanted to use inner HTML so that the HTML actually gets parsed by the browser. Okay, so that's the difference between inner HTML and text content. Now, there are 47.478 blah, 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 blah days. Countdown to the fireworks. Clearly, we don't want to show that, right? We want to show the floor of this value. So again, I'm going to take this and run it through math.floor. I'll be using math.floor a lot. Refresh. Okay, 47 days till the fireworks, and that makes sense, right? Okay, so we did E left. I need HMS. HMS, hours, minutes, seconds. Okay, that's this final step here. So it says here, rounded down to the next lowest integer. That's using math.floor. If I come back again, refresh. Again, show clock does not automatically run. I have to actually say show clock. And does this make sense? All right, so it's May 18th. So we already looked between May 18th and the 4th of July is about 45 days. And it says 47. If you did the math, yes, it's more accurate. 9:30 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night is 11 and a half hours difference. Okay. And if you did the exact math, this actually lines up. So this makes a lot of sense. So our JavaScript functions are done. Let's check that. Wow, and we failed a few things. Let's see what we failed. What doesn't it like? All right, so it looked for the span. I have that. I wonder if it's because I'm on multiple lines. So let me just take that, put it back on one line. And it was looking for, they want us to use HRS, not hours. So I'm going to double click on hours and hit Control H for replace. I'm searching for hours. I want to replace it with HRS. And I want it to be case sensitive because I don't want to change this set hours here. I only want to change it where hours is lowercase. So there's 4 matches, 1, 2, 3, 4. That makes sense. Let's replace all. Okay. Let's see now if this worked. There we go. All right. So, I would argue that this being on multiple lines is not wrong, but it didn't pass the code check. And then, I didn't follow directions. It says use HRS. I used hours. I'm not a big fan of abbreviating variables as much as the book does. So that caught me up. But we figured it out. Okay. Let's go into JavaScript commands. Directly after the opening comment section, so right here, insert a command to call the show clock function. So previously I was doing this manually. Now it's actually running. And if I come back and refresh, there you go. It, almost instantly puts the 518 in there. If you watch real carefully, you see for a brief minute or brief, not even microsecond, that the old date was in there. And then after show clock, insert a command that runs show clock every second using set interval. Okay, so we're going to use set interval. And set interval is going to show clock every second. So this is the interval that we're running this function. And if I come back and refresh, it looks like that. And show clock is running every second. We just don't really know it because nothing really changes, right? Every second it runs this function, which comes up with the day with this particular time, and then does all this math. But because we're using this particular time, nothing ever changes. The values always stay the same. Let's see if this works. It worked and it checked. Great. Okay, so we did this. Oh, and it tells us the time and everything that it should count down to. I have 47 days. They have 46 days. What did I screw up here? Oops, May 19th. Okay. 46 days. See, even I screwed things up. 11 hours, 28 minutes, 33 seconds. Yes, that's what it says. It will not change because the script uses a fixed day for that, which I just explained to you. Return to tiny timer. Not really tiny. TNY is Tulsa something. NY. I don't know what the NY stands for. Change the statement that declares this day so it contains the current date rather than a specific one. So I'm going to take this line. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to comment out the first version so I still have it in my code. And then I am not giving this a particular date. So when you use date and you do not give a date, it returns the current time. And Let's take a look now. So every second my function runs, which creates a new date and then adds the date right here into this span so that you can see that the seconds are updating every second. And now the next 4th of July is, July 4th, 2022. And the countdown to that at 9 p.m. is right here. 78 days, 11 hours, 15. So if you look at the time right now, that seems about right. If you add 15 minutes to the time, we're at 10 a.m. If you add 11 hours to 10 a.m., you're at 9 p.m. And then 78 days away, that seems about right. We're like 2.5 months out. So that logically makes sense. So we can validate the HTML if we wanted to, although we really didn't change any of the HTML. All we did was added this script tag. So I'm not going to worry about that. I don't think there is a JavaScript validator, because if your JavaScript doesn't work, it just doesn't work. All right. It's not like HTML where you can get away with things being wrong. JavaScript, it's either right or wrong. So let's check this. And we failed. How did we fail? There was like nothing else for us to do here. So we're running into a MindTap issue here that it's not validating this. I was hitting an error that the spans in the countdown were not integers. And to get around this, to make it validate so you can submit the assignment, put the values 1, 2, 3, 4 in these spans. So on D left, give it 1, H, give it 2. I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as they're numbers. And then when you run to validate, it passes. All right. I don't know why we hit that issue, but we did. Anyway, we're all done here. Submit this. And you're done. There is your Tulsa summer party.